What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. Alright, so before I get into this video, I want to give a shout out to the brother Ticket TV for that live stream that he did earlier today that had former NBA player, I think his name is Chris Copeland, had the brother Mr. Moss on there, and also the featured guest was Chris Broussard. Chris Broussard, of course, formerly of ESPN, now is, of course, an employee of Fox Sports 1, and has a podcast that he co-hosts with Rod Parker, who is also a former ESPN personality. Now, it was a really good podcast, but there's something that Chris Broussard said that I just don't agree with, and that is that it's so crystal clear that LeBron is better than Kobe. When, in reality, I could have sworn that from, I'd say at least 2006-ish, 2005, 2006 to about 2013, most analysts said the best player in the NBA was Kobe, right? Now, this is when LeBron was playing with Cleveland the first time around, and this is also when going into the period of time when LeBron was playing with the Miami Heat, right? The two best players were supposedly LeBron and Kobe. And at that particular time, if Chris Broussard, what he's saying is correct, that LeBron was dragging, guys who weren't really that good to the finals, then why was it just assumed, and the NBA was making a campaign that in the finals we would see Kobe versus LeBron? And if those teams were so bad, then why were they winning with Mike Brown? Why were they winning 66, 61 ball games? Why was Mike Brown winning Coach of the Year? I'm just trying to figure out why these teams were so bad. Like, at the end of the day, I'm not saying that those guys were individually great, like superstars. But, okay, if that's the case, right, then why were the Detroit Pistons in 2004, this team that had no superstars, no top 75 players, the only team that's won a championship in the recent history that had no top 75 players featured, why did they make easy work of the Lakers, who featured Shaq and Kobe, both at or near their primes? Gary Payton, of course, faded. Karl Malone toward the end, yeah, but still, star-studded, made easy work of them. So it's not always about having a superstar on your team or two or three superstars on your team. But I remember watching that playoff, and while LeBron definitely was the reason why, the main reason why that team went to the finals, you take nothing away from it. But over the last few years, it's become an oversimplification to say that he played with, quote, a bunch of bums. That every game LeBron was just dragging these bunch of bums to the NBA Finals. That's bullshit. In that series against the Detroit Pistons, if I remember correctly, games 1, games 2, and games, I think, 4 and 6, LeBron had poor games. I think the games in which he played well were games 3 and his exceptional game in game 5. But after that 48-point game on the road, which was remarkable and pretty much was the pivotal game, but in game 6, LeBron went something like 3 of 11 or 3 of 16, or he had a horrible game 6. Boobie Gibson scored 31 points in that game, hit 5 for 5 from downtown. There were some games when the front court of Ilgauskas and Drew Gooden, those guys combined to have like 30 points and 20-some rebounds. In the 2007 finals, even though that team got swept, the front court of Gooden And Ilgauskas actually outscored and out-rebounded Tim Duncan. And their defense kept them in a lot of games. The problem was the Spurs interior took the drive away from LeBron and forced him to become a jump shooter, and he failed. 22 points a game, 33% shooting. Now, yes, a lot of it is because of his youth, and he hadn't developed certain aspects of his game yet. But, a lot of people hold that against Kobe when he shot those air balls against Utah, right? So at the end of the day, still, it's part of the equation. If you're going to say that, well, the reason why LeBron wasn't able to win a championship was because he hadn't developed quite as a player, but then at the same time, you can't sit there and say that only reason why he took those teams to the finals is because he was such a dominant, all-time player. No, those guys provided a need. Those guys made up a lot of deficiencies. Good guys like Gibson, guys like Sasha Pavlovic provided outside shooting, and guys like Larry Hughes, Drew Gooden, I'm trying to think of some of the other guys who was on their teams, but they had some defensive stoppers. And that's why those teams were number 1, number 2, number 3 in defense, and top 3 in three-point shooting. But back to the point I'm trying to make about Kobe, right? The thing he's talking about with the field goal percentage, we have to keep in mind the era that Kobe played in. Okay? This past year, this 2022-23 season, the NBA set a record for effective field goal percentage. Average effective field goal percentage. Never been this high before. The points per game, nearly 115 a game. The highest has been in, I think, about 50 years. The average field goal percentage, 47.5%. The highest has been in over 30 years. Going on 35 years. Free throw percentage, the highest it's ever been. Pace is the highest it's been in close to 30 years or around 30 years. It's just easier to score. The average shooting guard today shoots over 46% from the floor. Okay? The average shooting guard shoots over 46% from the floor. And that's with all the three-pointers they take. When the Pistons defeated the Lakers back in 2004, the average shooting guard shot 41% from the floor. All these points I always make about centers, and it's easier for them to score because most of these guys, there's no resistance to the basket, and a lot of these guys get uncontested putbacks, layups, dunks, alley-oops, things of that nature, right? The average center today shoots close to 58% from the floor, right? 58%. But you also hear me often say, it's not necessarily these guys are great all-time scorers. It's just most of these guys are glass cleaners, rebounding. A lot of these guys have an improved passing skill set, but their job is mainly to rebound the ball and get the hell out of the way and go to the perimeter, right? Or rebound the ball, kind of get the hell out of the way and go for, somewhat try to patrol the paint, but you can't stay in the paint like that, right? But anyway, 20 years ago when Kobe played, you had real big men, right? Olajuwon, Ewing, or 25 years ago, 25 years ago, Olajuwon, Ewing, Duncan, Robinson, Mutombo, Mourning, Theo Ratliff, Sean Bradley, he was a shot blocker, Marcus Camby, Ben Wallace, Weber, Jermaine O'Neal, Amari Stoudemire. Do I need to keep going? Garnett. You know what I'm saying? We had real big men, right? All right. The average center shot 47% from the floor then. Now, why is it lower? because there was more resistance. These guys were in the paint, but you could play defense. So you had other bigs on these guys, right? You know what I'm saying? So it was not as easy to score just throughout the game. The spacing wasn't the same. Defenses weren't handicapped. So it was harder to score. So Kobe was shooting 45% from the floor. That sounds low, but the average shooting guard was shooting 41%. You name me shooting guards in that era, 99 to 2007, shooting guards that were consistently shooting over 50% from the floor. Didn't really have that. Trace McGrady, 43, 44%. Paul Pierce, 45, 46%. Even though I know he's small forward, but you get the point. They didn't shoot these high percentages back then. Now, in the 80s, the average shooting guard might have been at 48%, 49%. Not as many threes. The 90s and 2000s was the most defensive era, like the most slower pace yet defensive era in the NBA in recent times. At least going back probably to the 1950s. So Kobe's field goal percentage, you have to take it into perspective. All right? Another point I want to make about Kobe's low field goal percentage in the finals. 2000 Pacers. They were number 13 in defensive rating that year. All right? 2001 76ers, I believe they were a top 5 defense in the NBA. 2002 Nets, number 1 in the NBA in defense. 2008 Celtics, number 1 in the NBA in defense. 2009 Magic, number 1 in the NBA in defense. 2010 Celtics, number 5 in the NBA in defense. So maybe that contributes to why Kobe field goal percentage maybe wasn't the highest. And then another point I want to make about LeBron James. LeBron James is 6'9" and 265 pounds, more or less, right? So this big guy who's driving to the basket in an era where the spacing is so much better and there's not much resistance at the basket anymore. So, of course, a guy like him should shoot a higher percentage. Remember last year, LeBron played center and shot, 52% from the floor? But remember, centers shoot 57%, 58% from the floor. So he actually shot below league average for centers. All right, this year he shot about 50% from the floor. That's pretty good. But you got to look at the fact that over LeBron's career, close to half of his points, 38,000 plus points, right, in his career, but well over 18,000 of his career points have come in the paint. Almost half. Well over 18,000 points have come in the paint. So he should shoot a high percentage, right? Kobe Bryant was not physically blessed with the ability to play like LeBron. He was 6'6", really 6'5", 205 pounds. Not the most powerfully built guy. Plus, he played in an era where the bigs, like I mentioned back then, were camped down low. So little guys, well, comparatively smaller guys, I shouldn't call them a little guy, but comparatively little guys like to bigs like Ben Wallace and others, guys like Kobe, their domain was in the mid-range. Almost 50% of Kobe's shots came from 16 to 23 feet from the basket. So, if you're shooting the mid-range, which they consider analytics to be the least efficient shot, and he still shoots 45% for his career versus the league average for 41% for shooting guards, how is he inefficient, Chris Broussard? How is he inefficient? Now, I'll give you, LeBron is efficient field goal percentage-wise because of his, the fact that of the way he plays. But it could be a little misleading because if you look at the 50%, then you're thinking that, well, LeBron's a better pure shooter or scorer. And that's not necessarily true. I also disagree with Chris Broussard when he comes talking about how Kobe wasn't good enough to be a starter. That's not necessarily the case. I understand what they're saying, Kobe wasn't ready to be a starter yet. I get what they're saying, but let's look at something. 1996, Dale Harris, already been a coach there for a couple of years. All right, they just landed the free agent prize of the summer, Shaquille O'Neal, right? Shaquille O'Neal. At the time, he was probably averaging for his career 26 and 12. That was his career averages. Maybe even close to 27 and 12. They got him to win a championship. So they're in a championship mode, all right? They're in a mode to try to win a championship within probably a 3 to 4 year window. And maybe multiple championships. They got Eddie Jones, who's one of the better shooting guards in the NBA. They already got a lineup, a team that they feel, with maybe a couple added pieces, could be a championship team in the near future. An 18-year-old Kobe Bryant, as great as he was not really looked upon as part of that championship team. Jerry West saw a lot of potential in this young guy, and there was a lot of potential in him. This is the same dude that embarrassed Michael Cooper and John Drew, former NBA greats. But it was not in the league practice at that time to play 18-year-olds, no matter how phenomenal they were. And Dale Harris did not play young guys. It's not the same situation that LeBron was in. LeBron was in a situation where he was going to a Cavaliers team that hadn't won shit in 10 years, only won 17 games a year before that. And while LeBron was more NBA ready as far as his body is concerned, his rookie year, 20 points a game, only shot 42% from the floor and 29% from three. So you want to talk about field goal percentages, LeBron definitely wasn't LeBron yet. So, I mean, the thing that separated Kobe and LeBron was opportunity and his body. His body, which Kobe had to build up to. So, yeah, those are differences too, man. I'm not trying to knock LeBron, but to sit up there and say that it's ludicrous to say that Kobe was better than LeBron, that's BS. That's BS. To say that it's not debatable, I don't agree with that at all. Not at all. Okay? And to say, well, he played with Shaq, but he only shot 45% from the floor. I mean, look, man. At the end of the day, you know, look, I could say, well, okay. Well, Byron Scott played with Kareem and Magic, right? Why wasn't Byron Scott shooting like 50% from the floor every year? 52, 53% from the floor every year. I mean, part of it was, I know with Kobe, just because Shaq was getting double teamed doesn't mean that Kobe wasn't drawing double teams either. And, I mean, let's just be honest, man. You could be a lot more physical back then. You could be a lot more physical. And there was an incentive on defenders. There was an incentive on guys that could really play defense in those days. That's what the NBA was about, signing up guys that were known to play defense. Whether you're talking about the Roger Bells or the Ruben Pattersons or the Bruce Bowens, you know what I'm talking about. The Rashawn Leonard, who was a 3-and-D guy. It was about defense, not offense. It was a different league. It was about, man, this guy's a great defender. He has a reputation for being a great defender. So anyway, that's all I got to say in this video, man. Tell me what you guys think.